Hello, everybody. My name is Paul Richter. I'm marketing manager of Smarking. And today we have two panelists to talk about the flexible parking and how to do COVID recovery. Thank you so much for coming. Our first panelist is Gregg Reuben, who is CEO of Centerpark and knows a lot about the New York City area. And we also have Wen Sang, who is CEO of Smarking. And both of them know a lot about the parking industry. They've been in it for years and years. And if at any point you have any questions, please either click the raise hand or just put it in the chat box. To me, I will be monitoring the chat box and I can interrupt or, at an appropriate time to get to ask the Wen and Greg the question. So thank you very much. If you have any questions afterwards or anything, please contact me at marketing@smarking.com. That's marketing@smarking.com. So thank you very much. And I'm going to pass it over to Wen.
Thanks, Paul. Good afternoon, everyone. Super excited to have Gregg with me today to share a little bit of the latest learning in terms of market recovery, talk a little bit about the post-pandemic growth and recovery, business strategies, best practice, and also learn from everybody. So we designed this session as a fireside chat kind of a style, but as Paul said, we have a group of really great people from the community, from the parking mobility community today, and it'd be great if we could have this as a conversation. So any questions, any thoughts, comments, please type it in the chat box and raise hands. The session is recorded, as Paul said, so we'll make sure to share this with everybody. So quickly, I guess just to introduce myself for the folks who don't know me. I'm Wen, the CEO of Smarking. Smarking is a San Francisco-based technology company. We entered into the industry back in 2015 and really focused on bringing the best data and software technologies into the industry. As of today, we support north of 2,500 parking properties across North America, primarily working with leaders like yourself, from the parking operators world, the municipalities, and commercial real estate worlds. So today we're very lucky to have Gregg Reuben, a legendary man in the industry. Gregg, I'll introduce you with all the things I've learned about you, and please help me if I'm missing anything here. So what I've learned is Gregg has over 30 years of experience in the parking management business. Now, I've only gotten like 7 years in, so there's no comparison. And I know many of the good friends here in the session today have way more than me. So we're sharing thoughts, but also would love to learn from everybody today. Beyond that, also, I've learned that Gregg began his career in parking in 1992 when he was a student at UCLA. He built his first parking management companies. That's when he really started it. Beyond that, he has also held multiple senior management positions with 3 of the largest parking management firms in North America. And Gregg is currently the CEO of Centerpark, a New York-based real estate investment and technology firm specializing in acquisition and management of urban parking properties. So since, I guess, the launch of Centerpark's initial acquisition in 2018. Today, Centerpark history to date has invested over $100 million acquiring a portfolio of parking properties, primarily focused on the Manhattan region. Gregg is a graduate of Harvard Business School, and he is very active alum. He's involved in many entrepreneurial and philanthropic initiatives in the HBS community. I won't get into details, but feel free to reach out to Gregg and learn more later if interested. Gregg is based in New Jersey, married with 3 kids. Did I miss anything, Gregg?
No, I think you covered a lot of ground. Thank you.
All right, wonderful. Thank you, Gregg, again for joining us. Now, we designed the session as 2 parts. We'll have a conversation primarily focused on the 3 questions that we've put together for Gregg. Essentially, 1, I'll share some of the Smarking's observation in terms of market recovery, everything. And then primarily would ask for Gregg's perspectives in the New York region and Manhattan market. And beyond that, we'll talk a little bit about, in this post-pandemic world, everything has shifted. What are some of the best practice when it comes to running parking businesses? And the last part would be the parking technology discussion to see how we can leverage off different technology solutions out there to really, to a certain extent, enable post-pandemic growth in today's environment. And also, following that, we'll open the floor to the audience to make sure that we truly have the opportunity to let the questions flow and we can really have a discussion. So without further ado, I'll bring up my screen and share screen to just share a little bit on when it comes to market recovery. What is the observation that Smarking has had in the past months? Please do let me know if you can see my screen. All good? Okay, wonderful. So essentially, as you may know, Smarking is a company focused on enabling the real-time data analytics for mobility and parking leaders in the industry. And what we have done since the pandemic was essentially centralize all the data that we have and really help the community, help the industry to understand what is the dynamics of the market. We have released a product called Parking Industry Benchmark, which is the only one in the industry, but our goal is to support all the good people in the industry to not only know what is going on in your properties, but also what's happening out there in a very timely and visualized fashion. So we are all very familiar with this chart back in 2020. That was just a devastating year that where so many industries got impacted. And we can still see that back in April, business was down compared to 2019, more than close to 90%. And we exited the year with the winter kind of the impact close to 60% down. That was 2020. Across the year, it was 50% down. That was a horrible year. Now in 2021, good news is, and all the way to May 2022. So we update the data on an ongoing basis. And this is basically the history since then from a recovery standpoint across the board in North America for off-street parking in terms of number of transactions. What we have been seeing is compared to 2019, we entered January 2021 with still close to about more than 50% down. But then the recovery happened all the way to the summer 2021 was really good. But then obviously we had Delta impact, as you can see, August, September timeframe. It went back up a little bit, came down because Omicron in general was not as good, but then it started to go back. And somehow this past month, May, we saw that there was a little dip again.
And
so
when,
yeah.
Just a quick question. These are all the same locations that we're measuring over time, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
All the same locations.
Definitely.
Yeah, we have a pool. Yeah, we picked a great question, Paul. So for the all the locations that Smarking works with, we picked a section of close to 600 locations across the board, mostly urban. We did not differentiate if it is office, retail, or so. But I'd say mostly urban locations across the markets. So yeah, it looks to us that the journey of recovery is not a straight line back. Essentially, it's a kind of a little of a zigzag, and to a certain extent, we may have to expect this possibly would be the case.
Oh, and another quick question. For North America, is it specific markets or is it all of North America?
We would actually break down, I'd say, the entire nationwide kind of markets later, but primarily, I'd say these locations are mostly in the Northeast region, California along the coast, a good chunk in kind of the Texas region, all the big parking markets, Florida, Colorado. Mm-hmm. So it's spread it out. But yeah, it is. Yes. I would treat it as kind of a probe into the industry versus it is the ground truth per se. And Paul, I understand you're asking a question for the audience, so I would ask you to acknowledge the name of the.
Oh yes. Thank you, Damon, for the first one, and thank you, John, for the second question. So yeah, about the markets. So yeah, okay.
Wonderful. Great. Thank you. Amazing questions. Love it. Thank you, Damon. Thank you, John. So with this, we also had the opportunity to essentially break it down a little bit. And let's see. So break it down a little bit in terms of monthly versus transient. So the blue bar here, as we can see, is the monthly parking recovery, and the red bar is transient. As we can see across the board, since the beginning of January 2021 all the way to today, the recovery of monthly parking has always been behind the transient parking. Now, our hypothesis is, on one hand, when it comes to returning of the workforce, there was a little bit, people were out and about, especially last summer, doing things, but not necessarily the workforce is returned to the office space. Also, when people do return, the habit of driving and parking is very different from before the pandemic. Before the pandemic, most of the commuters would just come in Monday through Friday. That's just how we live. Today, a lot of the employers, although there's still things to be figured out, it is a hybrid mode in a way that some of the companies would come in 3 days, some companies 2 days, 4 days, a week, or different days throughout the month. So this absolutely impact how the parking assets and facilities are being utilized. And also, we've learned anecdotally from many of our friends in the industry that when parkers show up, a lot of times they may have canceled their monthly parking pass, but they would actually start pulling the tickets. So that helped the recovery on the transient side, but obviously it could hurt the monthly parking kind of the recovery. But also one thing that is interesting to see is just from a visual standpoint, it looks to me coming to 22 first quarter and especially last month, the gap across the board between monthly and transit is shrinking a little bit. So compared to last year, 2021. So my personal read of this is seems that when it comes to recovery, the general volume is coming back. Yeah, sure, it's not a straight line, but people are going back to the workplace, which is good. Obviously, we need that bounce back when it comes to the fundamentals of the economy, and this is what we're seeing. I'll speed up here a little bit. So we also look at on-street in general. I'd say on-street is a bit faster than off-street across the board when it comes to recovery. I would imagine that has something to do with its visibility, and also when it comes to the parking rates and so on. There are all kinds of factors. We can dig into the details later and see what Gregg has seen in New York market. One interesting thing I really wanted to share with everybody here is what we have been seeing is when it comes to drive up monthly or transient, that is one story. But this is the recovery of total number of transactions for online sales. We have a partnership with Arrive, and they were able to share with us data from over 15 US markets. And essentially, this is the number of transactions comparison for the set amount of locations and markets compare from January 21, a monthly basis, all the way to last month compared to 2019, the same month. And clearly, we can see that since June 2021, the volume of online sales have been beating 2019. And there was a little bit of dip in January, but since February, it has been beating 2019 in a much bigger way again. So we read, I read this off as clearly the consumer behavior is shifting a bit in a way that consumers like us would expect to use the parking facilities with a lot more kind of online activities than before. So these are the trends we need to pay attention to and then see, okay, what are the ways to take advantage of these kind of demand is going to be the questions we're going to touch on shortly. So there is a little bit breakdown of different markets. I won't go through every market, but to the earlier question, John asked, this is an example of Northern California. Not good. It doesn't look good to me. So Northern California, I think, yeah, it looks to me last month is even worse than the first quarter of this year. So long way to go back. And I suspect that is the pandemic and kind of the impact continued. But clearly different markets are behaving very differently. This is Northern California breakdown monthly versus transient. Looks to me though, last year seems like the monthly recovery was actually not bad, but then coming into this quarter one, seems like there's a kind of a reverse kind of recovery trend, which is not good. This is Northern California online, although still down. You can see the trend in terms of its difference between online and offline. LA Metro, this is Southern California. We don't have to get into the details, but from what we can see on a higher level, LA has been to a certain extent, it hasn't experienced the summer recovery last year, and it's a bit flat, but still the same. The percentage wise, it's to a certain extent a bit behind the rest of the market, unfortunately. Chicago, though, is completely different. What we're seeing for Chicago off-street parking since last summer, it has stayed within the 20% down kind of that boundary. And coming to this year, March was really good. Total volume, April, May came down a little bit, maybe also the new surge of the pandemic, whatnot. But from a total volume standpoint, Chicago has been doing well and ahead of North America, kind of the holistic kind of the market trend, which is good for Chicago. But the separation between monthly and transient parking is so wide. As you can see, the last 2 months, essentially, the transient parking has been beating 2019 in Chicago in terms of number of transactions. People are out and about, but monthly parking, not so much. So to this, we say Chicago is absolutely calling for. So notice that the monthly parking here is the full monthly parking as the same program set up before. So to us, we read this off as Chicago is absolutely calling for flexible options. People are going back and they're trying to figure things out. The three effects we talked about earlier is absolutely amplified here in Chicago. This is online. Chicago online is telling pretty much the same story as North America, but from a volume standpoint, I would suspect they're probably one of the forward ones. New York, I would say Smart has very limited data points when it comes to New York. New York is a humongous market, 1,800 plus sites, as I've learned from Gregg, and we have very limited data sources in New York as of right now compared to that. So this may not represent the actual trend. But what we're seeing is the last month and January, we saw the pandemic effect pretty clearly. Last summer was really good. And if we break down monthly versus transient, there's kind of, it seems like recovery was happening beginning of the year, but then it came back down last month. And when it comes to the online numbers, same thing. One interesting thing I saw here on the left-hand side, this is the transactions. Seems like the total volume is still a bit down compared to 2019. Clearly, New York is one of the earliest took online sales, but revenue was up. So there is definitely a change of the rates in average, to my understanding. So that is very interesting. Maybe this is the parking industry battling the inflation effect, but this is kind of some of the interesting things we see that there is a separation between transaction volume. Now, I'll pause here and then ask Gregg, is this what you're seeing as well? What is, some of your observation, Gregg?
Yeah, it's there's unequivocally New York is a different market, and in some ways it's not as challenging to fill our parking facilities, particularly because of just the disparity between the supply versus demand. But really the ongoing challenge for us in New York is always the quality of the parker with whom we're filling the garage. And, is it the most beneficial parker? Are they paying the most amount of money relative to the time that they're spending in the garage? And that's really where we spend so much of our time and focus in trying to better understand who our parker is and which parker group within our addressable market is most beneficial to the property. What we found for 2022 versus 2019 year to date, our same store sales are up almost 22%, 21.9% to be exact. And it's really a combination of both volume and rates. So our volume's up just under 12%, 11.7% to be exact. And our rates are up 10.2%. So that's how we get to the 21.9%. So about a little over 11% in terms of our volume, and then our rates are up about a little over 10%. When we looked at 2021 versus 2019, it was also it was trending in the same manner. Our volume was up just under 10%, and our rates were up just over 5%, giving us total revenue increase. And these are same store sales as well. So these aren't just adding new locations to our mix. And so our total revenue was up a little over 15%. What we're finding right now for 2022, I think in looking at year to date through April 2022 versus 2021, is that we've become much more rate oriented. So now our garages are at the utilization levels that we want. And we're now starting to give back some of that volume to trade in some of the monthly parkers, for example, that we use to backfill our spaces to keep our occupancy and our utilization high. We consider a lot of the monthly parkers what we call low value parkers. They typically pay the least amount of money relative to the time that they spend in the parking facility. And so when we have an opportunity, so we want them to the extent that we need to fill spaces. But then when we feel there's a better alternative and an opportunity to bring in more transient parkers or hospitality type parkers, which are usually derived from the hotels with whom we do business, then we'll do that. And we do that usually through pushing rates. We're a little selective about the parkers that we pass those rate increases along to. So we don't typically do across the board rate increases. We're pretty selective about the parkers that they apply to, because we want to push out. It's kind of like going fishing, throwing the bad fish back, keeping the good ones. So right now we're doing exactly that. Our volume's pretty flat when we look at 2022 versus 2021, first 4 months, but our rates are up a little over 5%. So our total revenue is up about 5%, but it's all rate oriented. It's not because we're parking more cars. It's because we're charging more money to park those cars.
Super insightful and very fascinating insights, Greg. Do you have something you would like to share on the screen, or we'll follow your preference there, but would love to ask a couple of follow-up questions here from
yeah, let's see. I don't know if I actually
so there was a share screen button in the bottom.
Let's see.
So Paul, you're bringing it up, Greg, just to make sure I understood what you said there. So essentially, it sounds to me you're saying from your observation of your portfolio in the past few years, essentially the general trend is both the volume and the price went up for your portfolio. Is that fair? Okay.
It did. I mean, there are certainly times and months where we had to drop rates. Like and you and I have had these discussions before, which is why I love talking shop with you, because you're a data junkie as well, and a great business around data. And we try to collect and look at as much data as we can, so that we're trying to make the right decisions, and certainly don't always get it right. But there are times where we have to become rate oriented, and that might mean giving back, and lowering rates in order to try to move volume. We find that we work in these 4 to 6 month life cycles of parking. So like when we first take over a garage, our primary objective is to just fill that garage as quickly as possible. We're less discriminatory with regard to the type of parkers that we bring in. We just want it full. We want to see how much capacity we really can handle, look at when the peak times are versus the off-peak times, and just spend maybe it's 6 months, maybe it's a year stabilizing that garage, really getting a feel for the volatility, the seasonality, and the opportunities to scale. What are the appropriate hours of operation? What are the appropriate staffing levels? And then once we feel that we have it, at the point where we just can't fit any more cars in the garage, at that point we begin to become much more selective about the type of parkers that we want, and we'll begin to really scrutinize and become much more granular about what are those parkers paying relative to the time that they're spending in the garage, who's more beneficial, which parkers are not so beneficial to the garage, and we'll begin becoming more rate focused and less volume oriented. And we'll look to loosen up the garage by passing along rate increases and do these rate adjustments. And sometimes it's not always increases, sometimes it's just adjustments. I mean, we're happy to have parkers. It's not always about getting the parker to pay the most amount of money. Sometimes the parker that pays us $400 a month for monthly parking may be worth more money to us than the parker that's paying $750 a month for that same garage, because it's all a matter of how often they use their car, how long are they occupying that space, how taxing are they on our operations, because we have to park all of those cars ourselves. There's very few self-park properties in Manhattan and in the metropolitan area, so there's a cost to parking those cars. And so we'll begin to make those rate adjustments, level out the garage, and that might be another 4 to 6 month cycle. And then we basically will start all over again, and go back to becoming more volume oriented, filling the garage back up to the point of maybe reaching a tipping point where we know we just can't fit any more cars in the garage. Service begins to suffer. We might have to add more staff, claims are going up, and that's when we know we need to loosen up the garage again, and we do so by now switching to our rate, becoming more rate oriented and less volume oriented. And it's just ebb and flow and back and forth life cycle. And we can look at our data points, we can look at our KPIs and our metrics, and just by looking at our utilization rates or year over year rate increases, we can tell exactly where we are in that life cycle and what decisions need to be made based upon these data points going forward. So we can, if we were managed, and this is why when I love what it is that you guys are doing, because if we go back to the days where we just manage off of P&Ls, and we see that, oh, we're up 7% year over year. If we don't know why we're up 7%, if we don't know it's because we parked more cars or because we charged more money, the decisions that we need to make going forward are two entirely different sets of decisions. And so that's why again I applaud you guys for what you're doing to help us better understand our business.
I couldn't agree more, Greg. You can't manage what you measure, and the devil's in the details. You have to be able to drill down. But I'm extremely inspired by what you just said in terms of the framework you used. Essentially, what I'm hearing, Greg, you're saying is basically from what Smarking is looking at, the New York market is it's the zigzag kind of recovery as well. But most recently, a lot of volume is still pretty much down compared to pre-pandemic. But it sounds to me your locations, your portfolio is actually doing much better. I wouldn't say much, but better than pre-pandemic, both from the volume and from a pricing standpoint. It seems like the key there to enable that, you were saying, is basically you beat the market is what I'm hearing. And the way you did it is there is a framework of kind of a cycle, 4 to 6 month cycle to essentially create volume with whatever it takes from a rate adjustment standpoint to essentially get the volume up. And then you would be selective in terms of what kind of partners or transactions or products you would like to make available or serve, and then essentially sift through all different options, look at the details of what transactions are more profitable, and then kind of pull it back down a little bit by optimizing the mix of the transactions. And then you would do it again to essentially get the volume up, and then continuously to essentially run through the cycle to capture the dynamics on the market, cater to the kind of the changes on the market, and then essentially maximize the outcome. Is that fair to say?
Very much so. Yep.
Do you have a name for this? What do you call this practice?
So we have an acronym that we use. My partners are probably going to kill me for talking about it, but we have an acronym that we use called FIRST is our acronym. So F is we fill the garage. I is we identify our high value parkers, our low value parkers. R is when we get into our rate adjustments. And then the ST is we start all over again. And so FIRST has become the acronym for our life cycle of parking.
Amazing. Yeah. So this is really cool because I understand you're not only operating the assets, but you're also an investor and owner. So when it comes to your understanding of how a lot of the parking asset owner and investors, think about this when it comes to parking and look at your framework. What are some of the kind of the perspectives you've gotten from them when you talk about this?
So are you asking specifically about what the elements that we look for in the properties, or? Sorry,
let me rephrase. I was more curious, like, do most of the let's say the real estate owners and investors, they have this level of understanding, this is the way to go when it comes to their parking assets, what has been kind of,
okay. So, I mean, this is why, when myself and my partners, we started Centerpark back in 2018, and having been in this industry for a long time, I'm now just entered my 31st year in the parking industry, and certainly I've seen a lot of different cycles and changes and some constants as well. That the one thing that was evident after all these years. And more so now than ever before. And a lot of that, I think, has to do with the consolidation that's taken place throughout the industry over the last, really 2 decades, is that so many of the owners today don't operate. And now many of the operators don't own. Okay. And so we feel that there is probably there's an arbitrage between the two, and that by being an owner operator, we can certainly apply a granular understanding and be able to make decisions very quickly based upon the data that we see and the curves within the market. And so I think that probably gives us the largest advantage in being able to better understand our facilities, the real estate, and our response to the changes in the market. Where, as you know, we do have properties where we do third-party management, and while there are aspects of third-party management that we love, one of the challenges has always been in trying to help our clients better understand the industry. And by the time when we see changes happening in the market, and we want to respond with rate increases, or we need to respond with staffing, or changes to the staffing levels, or changes to the hours of operation, or maybe we need to offer different ancillary lines of business. There's timing that sometimes can impede our ability to capitalize on those opportunities, because we need to make an appointment to sit with our client, explain to them what it is that we see, why we want to make these decisions, and then they need time to absorb that information and respond to our requests. And by the time we kind of go through that process, we may have missed the opportunities already, and we might be on to a new set of changes that we need to make. So by being an owner operator, we can respond very quickly, like I said, to the changes and the needs of the marketplace.
Mm-hmm. That is really smart. So I understand essentially the way you made this happen is essentially by combine the mentality of a asset owner, essentially to maximize the outcome, the yield, at the same time, combine that with expertise when it comes to your first framework to essentially put those two things together to close that loop very quickly. Then you can gain results out of your assets much quickly and much effectively. So when it comes, my takeaway for, I guess, our friends in the operators world is essentially, it sounds to me there is opportunity if there are good practice put in place to help grow the results of the assets. And I would imagine investors, owners today would have such expectation when it comes to who to hire, how to hire, when it comes to their operating partner. I guess people who are with the mentality of yield management, capable of leveraging up data and fill up the garage and sift through all the parking mix and then really maximize the yield would be the winners, is kind of how I would look at it. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've always been an advocate of site-specific management, okay, and really ascertaining the needs of each individual property. The decisions we need to make for one site are entirely different than the strategies we need to deploy for another site. And so while it's nice to pat ourselves on the back for achievements that we have with regard to one particular parking facility, it's not always relevant to what needs to be done at this parking facility. And so we with our counterparts in the industry, when other owners come to us for advice, they have questions about who to select as an operator for their facilities. We always tell them, get comfortable with your tenant, or get comfortable with your operator, your proposed or the prospective operator, and really question them about what their plan is for your facility. What due diligence have they done to gain an understanding of your particular facility? Do they have an idea as to what your baseline is? What is the potential? Have they been able to articulate to you your addressable market? And so, if you're making, if your garage is making $200,000 a year now, but you feel that there's still some meat left on the bone and it should be making $300,000 a year, does the prospective manager understand that potential? Do they have a critical path plan on how to get there?
Yeah.
And as there's so many elements with regard to getting from point A to point B, and how long will it take to get there, and what level of investment will it take?
This is amazing. So actually, Greg, Damon from Transient Parking asked another question: what are Gregg's sites showing? I guess we touched on that briefly earlier, that Gregg's sites are showing exactly actually better results in terms of both volume and revenue or pricing compared to the New York market. And we were just talking about kind of the thesis Gregg followed as essentially the first framework to basically focus on getting the volume up first, dive deep into the whys and exactly what's happening with different parking products, and then refine it, kind of go through that cycle. But then that was a thesis, Greg, I guess you started a company with years ago. Now, this is kind of a segue into our second part of the discussion. The landscape of industry obviously shifted significantly. Now we're in the post-pandemic world. When it comes to what are some of the best ways to think about how to essentially look at all the new things happen, what is happening, and how do we go from there to make sure we're taking advantage of the opportunities and I guess dodging bullets when it comes to potential risks and so on. I'll bring up my screen again to quickly go through some other observations we've had in the past months when it comes to the more broader urban mobility landscape, and would love to come back to you, Greg, to ask you the question when it comes to this now a new world. What are some of the best things we should be thinking about and focus on to essentially make sure we're growing the business the right way? So we have prepared a lot of data, but I will is my screen good? Okay, so I will skip all of these other markets data for now, but please feel free to reach out to Paul if you through marketing@smarking.com if you wanted to see a full spectrum of data from different markets. I would say from a parking perspective, we saw that nationwide we had recovery, was zigzagging, and pandemic at different points all had impacts to us. There was a general fall behind between monthly parking from monthly parking compared to transient, and there was a shift up when it comes to online sales. California is a bit behind the market. Chicago is ahead of the market. New York looks like it was down, but I guess it completely depends on the location, who the owner is. Gregg's locations are beating market, and there's some secret sauce there.
But also when I mean, as much as we'd love to take credit for for the strategies that we use to enhance the performance of our facilities, I also think that part of it is also our site selection. We do have the opportunity to handpick what sites we want to buy and operate, and there is we are selective about the sites that we want to operate, and we certainly we look for properties that have a multitude of demand generators to help mitigate some of the volatility that we might see in a down market. And so I think that maybe if we had a broader portfolio, and I think our numbers, I think our facilities do cover a lot of the map in New York, and a good representation of the market, but it may not be a complete representation of the market. Where, like I said, if we had a broader portfolio, those numbers may not be as impressive.
Although the best people win.
Greg,
so
I got two questions from the audience. So one from John Dome. How are you preparing for the future, particularly with consideration to EVs and automated vehicles and ride sharing?
Those are good questions. We hear them a lot. I think that technology is I think technology is probably plays the most vital component in our industry's future, and the companies that anticipate their technology needs, as well as from an infrastructure perspective, as well as from a reporting and marketing perspective, are going to have the ability to survive and thrive. Where I think other companies that are slow to embrace these changes are going to struggle significantly. With EVs, we began a few years ago installing electric chargers in all of our garages. I think the challenge for us was, when do we get to the point where we start charging our customers for it? It's always been it's always been a giveaway, just kind of a value add for our customers, and we're now at the point where we're ready to start charging for the customers. I think we're going to roll out I think we're going to start with kind of a simple menu of charging options for our customers. But the biggest challenge for us has probably been upgrading the infrastructure not just of our facilities, a lot of our garages are what we call condominium garages. So we own the garage unit, but it's part of a larger real estate project. So we own it as a commercial condominium. And most of these buildings, like pretty much all of them, were not built with EV chargers in mind. The electrical panels need significant upgrades. And so not only do we have to be cognizant of the cost of installing the chargers, and that's certainly getting easier because of the federal incentives that are out there right now. But we still need to pay for upgrading the electrical panels in these facilities, and that's relatively significant. But it needs to be done nonetheless. And we look forward to the day where the garages are the new gas station. When I was first entering the business, a lot of garages still had gas pumps in them, and they were beginning to get phased out, and then ultimately they've been pretty much phased out, except for maybe a few of the rent-a-car garages that have rent-a-cars in them still have them, but we don't see them too much anymore. But now I think that's going to change, and I think garages will be the go-to for charging options. So we look forward to that. I think it's going to be a really big boost and shot in the arm for our industry.
Yeah.
But I think we're all looking, and trying to figure out the most efficient and fair and equitable way to charge our customers for this service.
Very cool. So
And,
basically, let me add a comment here, Bob. So essentially, Greg, what I'm hearing is electric vehicles are coming in. Autonomous vehicle people talk about all the time. These things could happen very quickly, but that sounds like the key thing for parking asset owners and operators is essentially engage technology to make it so easy for your customers to pay for your services. These are things people want. Make it possible and easy for people to pay for them. Doesn't matter if it's electric charging or whatever it may be, or let the autonomous driving vehicle open the gates. Just make it easy for people to pay for it. Is kind of a key thing there. Is that okay? Yeah,
I think I talk about it all. I talk about it all the time within our company and with my partners, that our value proposition is about convenience, and we have to extend a high level of convenience to our customers. Parking in New York, as everybody knows, is not is expensive. And it's and people are willing to pay for it, not because it's their only alternative, because in many cases it's not their only alternative. There are other transportation alternatives.
Right.
But there are people that are willing to pay for the convenience, and they're willing to monetize their time. And so that's our value proposition, is how do we allow people to monetize their time? How do we keep the storage and the retrieval of their vehicle and some of the other services that go along with that, such as ultimately charging? How do we deliver that value proposition in a manner that's still equitable for them? And as soon as we can no longer help them monetize their time, I think we're in trouble as an industry, and they will then look at other options and alternatives with regard to transportation.
Yeah, you're right. To that, what we're seeing on the screen is basically Uber's data. They publish this data on a quarterly basis, and they basically are saying, so they segmented their business into three parts as of right now, right? Mobility, which is their ride share, delivery is their Uber Eats, and freight is whatever they're doing the matchmaking when it comes to the trucks and so on. So basically they're saying the light green bar is the mobility or ride share. If you look at Q4 last year compared to Q4 2019, it's still less than 75% covered. So basically, before the pandemic, I remember there was a time everybody's like, rideshare is coming, Uber, it's eating up our business.
Right.
Why? Because it was convenient. It was easy. It was so easy for people not to think about anything, just pay for it and then get from point A to point B. Now, I'd say there is clearly a shift of landscape in a way that we look at kind of the change of monthly transient parking, but also we've observed a lot more people driving their own vehicles. They don't want to take public transportation. We can take a look at public transportation as well. This is the MBTA in Boston's kind of ridership recovery. We can also take a look at their latest Q1 numbers. It plateaued. Basically, public transportation is about 50% recovered. Uber Red's 75% recovery.
Mhm.
And a lot of people are driving their own vehicles. And who is going to win? To Greg's point, I believe that if we make parking so easy to use, so easy to pay for, so easy to navigate that we don't even need to think about it, money is going to flow this way, is kind of my takeaway.
Right.
So to that, yeah, go ahead, Paul. I know there was a couple of questions related to the.
Yeah. So, thank you, Wen. We did have another question from Andrew Sachs, which is, Greg, how are you marketing your New York properties online, and does that work and get you many more customers?
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So
online, how do you make it online?
Yeah.
yeah, so it's a myriad of different ways. I mean, we've been early adopters of online of mobile reservations. We built our first mobile reservation system in late 2006, and
Your
it was
own
that way.
site?
Pardon me, for our own sites.
Your own site.
Yeah.
So that's when Facebook got started, and you built your own online sales portal.
We did. At that point, at that time in the market, everybody, all of our competitors were using coupons, and that became really popular. I just had an adverse reaction to coupons. We felt that it really opened ourselves up to manipulation, and it didn't. And from the customer's perspective, it wasn't really a high level of commitment. In Manhattan, even if you intend to even if you intend to end up at point A, you can easily end up at point B because of traffic, or because the street's closed, or there's too much congestion. You have to make a right instead of a left, and even though you want to end up here, you end up there. And so we wanted we wanted people to know and be able to identify where they were going to park prior to even getting in their car, for all the same reasons that mobile reservation systems exist today. We saw it in 2006 and the need for it. And it really helped us in being able to fill our facilities very quickly, create a value proposition for our customers that really gets behind and promotes their time and the savings of their time and the monetization of their time. So we use all of the aggregators, including our own site, and we sell on average probably about 30% of all of our sales are coming through our mobile reservation system. We sell the most on our site, even though we have the same offerings between Spot Hero, ParkWiz, and our own site, Park and Save. We have the same offerings across the board, but we just have a lot of success with our own site. We have an in-house team that does nothing but manage Park and Save. We have 3 full-time people, and including a really great guy that has a handle on digital marketing. We outsell the 2 sites 2 to 1 on our site. So we're doing probably over $200,000 a month just through our own site, but we're big believers, like I said, in online sales. What's changed today versus when we first started doing it, over 15 years ago, is that we're less reliant. There's so many more options to reach the market digitally, and so we're much less reliant on pay-per-click. Which is, anybody that's been doing this for a while knows it's an expensive acquisition cost for your customers, and campaigns, the traditional keyword campaigns and AdWord campaigns. So we're able to do much more sophisticated marketing that's more targeted. So whereas a lot more broad and general, we can be much more specific regarding the parker type that we want through geofencing, through Waze, and Google Analytics, and the advancement of Google Analytics has been terrific. And again, helping us better understand our customer, allowing us to get to a more targeted customer, and not have to waste so much money with these broad stroke approaches.
Amazing.
Nice.
Wow.
But also, I got to say that we still do some traditional marketing that works really well. We still do postcards and mailings when we need to, and we find that they still that we still get good response rates from them. So
it's a full spectrum. Yeah.
Pardon me?
So it's a full spectrum. It's not one
Yes.
thing, one silver bullet. It's a collection of different things. And it is amazing that you're doing 30% of your business online. Essentially, we saw the shift of online from one kind of angle earlier from the data perspective. But if consumers are online, you want to meet them online. And it's amazing that you guys started doing that 2006.
Yeah.
And you're doing more. It sounds like, Greg, you're saying you're doing more business on your own channel than even the aggregators, third-party aggregators. But I guess the view is it's going to be all kind of ways to reach your customers, and you're going to have a full collection, but you're going to promote your own whenever possible is kind of the case. Is that fair to say?
It is. And, and we try a lot of different things. I don't think, we don't, it takes a long time to get it right.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a lot of trial and error with what's working. And then we find new ways and new opportunities, and people approach us all the time with creative marketing endeavors, and we try them, and some work and some don't work, but it is a lot of trial and error. But I got to say, we're much less focused on, like I said, the broad shotgun approach. And really, I think what's changed over time, as I said before, is about being more targeted.
Mm-hmm.
And it allows us to be more efficient and not have to spend as much money as we used to have to spend to generate the online sales that we do. I mean, we probably spend today, in terms of AdWords and digital marketing costs, probably maybe 30 or 40% of what we used to spend to generate those same sales.
That's amazing. So
That's great.
Absolutely try everything, but ultimately get targeted, experimenting them, measure the results so that you can get high value kind of or high return channels really activated after, I guess, trying everything.
Yeah, it's important to know. I mean, what type of customer do you want? First of all, who are the different customers and parker types that exist within your addressable market? And then out of those customer types, what are the differences between them? Are they 10-hour parkers, and are they early bird parkers and 10-hour parkers? Or are they late shift workers? Or are they hospital visitors? Or are they students? Or are they retail customers? Are they theater customers? And really understand, who are they and how do they fit within your facility? And what are the needs that they're filling for you? Because, like I said, in New York, because of the disparity between the supply versus demand, it's not such an accomplishment to fill up your garage. What it is filling your garage up with the right type of parkers. And that's why we're big believers in in looking at utilization and turns, not just occupancy, right? We could be 100% occupied all the time if we want, but we may lose money with if we're just looking at occupancy. We tell people all the time that we're like tables in a restaurant. That a restaurant, their inventory isn't their food, it's their tables. Right. They can always buy more food, but they can't create more tables.
Exactly. It's a real estate business at the end of the day. This is great. So I want to be mindful of our time, because we, per design, we have 4 minutes left. We can extend for another 5 minutes, but really wanted to make sure we're being mindful of everybody's time. So I do understand there are a lot of questions. Paul helped us to queue up with the amazing audience we have here and attendees we have here. So we promise you that if we are not able to cover all the questions here, we'll make sure to share the questions with Greg and myself, and we'll make sure to follow up with some of the thoughts, perspectives as through an email, and we'll publish a blog later to make sure we cover all the questions.
Yes.
For the time being, I know we talked quite a bit about how the market has recovered. What are some of the new shifts? Essentially, we saw that volume is coming back, but it's not a straight line back. Monthly is falling behind transient. Online is a lot more. Customers want that. You got to make it easy. Per Greg, make it convenient for people to pay for the things that they wanted to. That applies to EV. That applies to a lot of other things. But also from a broader mobility standpoint, we saw that public transportation is 50% recovered. Ride share is 75%, indicated by Uber numbers. People want to drive their own cars. And our view is, let's make it easy, right? Workforce returning, they're not coming back every day. How to essentially make flexible parking easy for everybody to buy, to pay for, to access your locations. Those are the key questions we need to ask, and we should ask. So with that, one last question to Greg. So we've seen the shift of the landscape. People want things online. People want things EV. People want flexible parking. People want a lot of these things. And it is absolutely helpful for us to meet the customers where they are, make it easier for them to pay for it, and being customer oriented. What are some of the recommendations you have for our friends from the park industry in the operating world, in the ownership world, when it comes to this post-pandemic kind of the park industry? What are some of the best practice things when it comes to technology, when it comes to business practice you would like to recommend?
This is a question posed to me.
Question for you. Yeah.
I think that, listen, everybody's strategies are a little bit different, so we can only speak to what we find important. We believe that it's about efficiency, efficiency on our end and efficiency for the parker. We want their experience to be as seamless and frictionless as possible. We love that we're now able to issue digital tickets, but we're really hoping for the connected car, and that cars will be able to just drive into the parking facility, drive out of the parking facility, and there needs to be very little interaction with us, and there doesn't need to be a transaction that takes place on site, and that a lot of our time is and thoughts and money investments are being spent on how we can better this experience and enhance this experience, not just for the customers but for our team, so that so that our staff that's on site can spend more of their time parking vehicles, staging the garage, and less time handling transactions at the garage level. And so we work very hard to try to minimize the amount of transactions that occur at the site.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. So each location is different in the parking world. We understand that. The key there,
we also believe in KPIs. We think that we try to stay away from, while P&Ls are an important part of any business, and we try to manage with KPIs and operating metrics. I like to do this exercise all the time, where I'll show people that if we take maybe some of our biggest losers, and compare it to some of our biggest winners, and we we apply a standard set of key performance indicators and metrics. In many cases, the big loser is probably operating really well, because it's getting a lot of time and attention, because they're trying to figure out how to turn an unprofitable facility into a profitable facility. And the winners that we have that are extremely profitable sometimes aren't getting any attention at all. And from an operating perspective, may not be operating well at all. There could still be a lot of meat left on that bone. And so that's what happens when we manage by P&Ls. And the truth is that our operating team probably could do very little to turn those losers around, because it probably has a lot to do with our acquisition costs. And the winners, could be operated much better, because if they were to just apply a little more time and thought, and not just take for granted that maybe our acquisition cost was opportunistic.
Makes sense. Not every parking transactions is the same, and that was in the details. So the key to get to the insights is not just managed by P&L, but really understand what is the mix of the transactions, and then measure everything, go through the cycle, first cycle, and essentially get the volume going and optimize the mix.
And we never get it right. I mean, there's no plateaus.
Right.
So,
I mean, personally, I couldn't agree more with your approach, Greg. From Smarking's perspective, although we started the business with the holistic kind of the data mindset, we're trying to essentially help, friends and people in the industry to essentially manage through measuring, right? You can't manage what you don't measure. Now, in the post-pandemic world, we understand, to your point, online sales is coming up. We see it from the data. We hear it from your kind of a portfolio, and we focus on supporting our partners to essentially 2x their online sales through our dynamic pricing engine. So please reach out if you're interested. It is something you can leverage off some of the latest technology by turning your own data into money directly. And in this post-pandemic world, we talked about monthly parking falling behind in Transient, but online presence, meet your customers where they are, is extremely important. Gregg started in 2006. I mean, we got to catch up. So I'd say get online. Let's make the flexible options easy to pay for, easy to access for your customers, Smarking is here at your support. We have a new platform called SmartPass. Feel free to reach out to learn more. QR code in and out for the parkers, and integration when it comes to parks and payment. All the flexibility you may need in the world to make it easier for your customers to pay for it. I wanted to thank you again, Gregg, for joining us and sharing insights today. Amazing session. I want to thank everybody from the audience to share thoughts, questions, and joining us today. I understand we have a queue of questions from John, from Narendra, from Joshua,
Anonymous.
from Ranak. We'll make sure to capture all the questions and come back to you with more thoughts from Gregg. I'll try to contribute as well. But yeah, I want to be mindful of the time here. And again, thanks to everyone. Reach out to us afterwards. Gregg will check in to see if it's okay to share your contact info with friends. Yeah, okay. Yeah, you will have access to Gregg.
Thank you, Paul and Wen.
Thank you, Gregg, very much.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone. Yeah. All right.
Thanks. Hi. So yeah, just gonna. Okay. So
Yeah.
Oh, I was gonna say thank you all for coming. I've got the four of your and Kenya. I'm also going to put you. There's a lot of questions about EVs. What I'm going to do is send all these questions to Wen and Gregg, get the answers, and then email all of you guys with the answers. So thank you very much. And if you want more questions, please email me at marketing@smarking.com. And also, I know that I'm sending this slide deck that Wen was showing to 3 people so far. If any of you want it, it probably won't. I probably won't post it on the website, but if you want it, please email me at marketing@smarking.com, and I will send it to you. So thank you very much. And yeah, I will also send all of you guys the recording. So I'm going to send everybody the recording. Actually, I could just send everybody the slide deck too. It'd be easier too. So everybody, I'm going to send you the recording of this webinar, the answers to the next to these 5 questions that we have, which are a lot about EVs and online parking. And then I'm also going to send you guys it was slide deck, answers, and the webinar. So yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you guys.
Thank you very much, Gregg. Thanks everyone.
Thank you. Take care, guys.
Thank you very much, Gregg. Yeah, perfect. And